When we think about the origins of dogs, we think about wolves. We think about ancient humans taming fierce predators over thousands of years, slowly selecting for friendlier traits until we ended up with the loyal companions sleeping on our beds today. It's a nice story. It's also almost completely wrong. But here's what most people don't know. The oldest written records we have about dogs don't describe domestication at all. They describe something far stranger. They describe dogs that were already here, already waiting, already knowing what we needed before we knew ourselves. This is the story that textbooks skip, the story that rewrites everything we think we know about human-dog relationships. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why the very idea of humans domesticating dogs might be exactly backwards. Let's start with what we're actually told. The conventional narrative is comfortable, simple. Dogs came from wolves. Thousands of years ago, the least aggressive wolves started hanging around human settlements, eating our scraps. We tolerated them. Then we fed them intentionally. Then we bred them. Eventually we got dogs. We shaped them. We made them ours. But the archaeological record doesn't actually support this. Wolf-dog hybrids are notoriously difficult to create and even harder to maintain. Wolves are neurologically different from dogs. They're suspicious of humans in ways that don't go away with food. They don't cooperate. They don't follow social hierarchies established by another species. Even if you raised a wolf from birth, it would never behave like a dog. It would never look at you the way your dog looks at you. Yet somehow, according to the old story, humans figured this out and did it anyway, repeatedly, across different continents, with no apparent precedent. They supposedly engineered this impossibly complex behavioral transformation by accident, through accident, without understanding genetics or evolution or anything about animal behavior. The fossil record tells us something different. Dogs appear in our archaeological record almost simultaneously with organized human settlements. Not centuries later, not millennia later. At the same time, around 15,000 years ago, we see the first evidence of dogs living alongside humans. And here's where it gets interesting. These early dogs don't show the genetic markers we'd expect from a domestication process. They don't show the slow, gradual changes in skull structure or bone density that you'd see if humans were selectively breeding them over generations. They appear almost fully formed, almost as if someone or something had already done the work for us. The Sumerian tablets that we're discussing, these aren't just casual mentions of dogs. They're technical. They're specific. They list dogs by type, by function. They describe dogs that were apparently designed for specific purposes before humans even understood what those purposes would be. One tablet, translated from the Sumerian King List archives, describes dogs that were placed with humans for protection, but not protection in the way you'd think, not protecting humans from external threats. The language, when properly translated, suggests something closer to guardianship, monitoring. The tablet uses a word that modern Sumerian scholars have struggled to translate because nothing in our modern world quite matches it. It's a word that means something like to watch over and understand. It's the same word used to describe shepherding, but with a deeper connotation. Not just controlling movement, but maintaining awareness of internal states. Now, before you dismiss this as speculation, consider what we know about dog cognition. Modern neuroscience has revealed something remarkable about dogs. They possess an unusually high sensitivity to human oxytocin levels. They can literally smell changes in our neurochemistry. When you're anxious, depressed, scared, or sick, your body releases chemical signals. Dogs detect these signals before you're even consciously aware of them. Dogs can sense epileptic seizures before they happen. They can detect blood sugar drops in diabetics. They can identify cancerous cells through smell alone. They can recognize the scent of stress hormones and respond to them with specific behaviors designed to calm you down. This isn't learned behavior. This isn't trained ability. This is hardwired into their neurology, built in, like original equipment. And here's where the Sumerian connection becomes disturbing. If we accept that dogs were engineered, not bred, but actually engineered, to monitor human neurochemical states, then the entire history of human civilization changes. It means we weren't the ones in control. It means dogs weren't our servants. They were our observers, our monitors, our record keepers, in a biological sense. The Sumerians understood something that we've forgotten. They understood that dogs existed in a relationship with humans that predated our relationship with them. The Sumerian tablets don't describe domestication. They describe integration, acceptance. They describe humans learning to live with creatures that were already equipped to understand us in ways we couldn't understand ourselves. Consider the Sumerian description of what dogs were meant to guard. The translation we usually use is guard, but the Sumerian word is more like maintain vigilance over. It's about continuous, active monitoring, not occasional watchfulness, but constant awareness. The kind of awareness that would require real-time feedback about a human's internal state. Why would the Sumerians need to describe this? Why would they feel compelled to document something so fundamental about dogs that they felt it necessary to carve it into stone? Because they were remembering, they were recording something that was slipping away, something that the next generation might forget. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Every dog breed we have today was supposedly created by humans through selective breeding, but the timeline doesn't work. We went from 0 dog breeds to dozens of distinct, stable, genetically distinct populations in a time frame that's archaeologically impossible. German Shepherds didn't exist 500 years ago. Retrievers didn't exist 200 years ago, yet they breed true immediately. No awkward transitional stages, no gradual development of consistent traits. They appear almost as if someone had already encoded specific traits into canine DNA, and those traits were simply being re-expressed and refined once humans got involved. The Sumerian tablets go deeper than just the description of what dogs were for. They also describe something called the knowing. Again, difficult to translate, but the Sumerians seem to believe that dogs possessed a form of knowledge that existed outside of normal sensory perception. They knew things about humans that humans didn't communicate through language. They knew things about individual people that no one had told them. They knew when danger was coming. They knew when sickness was arriving. And if you've ever owned a dog, you know exactly what the Sumerians are describing. That moment when your dog acts differently around someone you don't trust yet. That moment when your dog knows you're sick before any symptoms appear. That moment when your dog watches you with an expression that suggests it understands something about your life that you haven't figured out yourself yet. If you want to dive deeper into this, and I mean really deep into the archaeological translations and the genetic evidence that challenges the standard narrative, we've put together an extensive breakdown in the description and in the pinned comment. It's one of those resources that gets into the peer-reviewed research that universities don't really advertise. Now, the next logical question is this. If dogs weren't domesticated by humans, if they were instead something that existed in a specific relationship with us from the very beginning, then who created them? The Sumerian tablets don't answer this, but they do hint at something. They describe dogs as gifts. Not acquisitions, not resources that were found and claimed. Gifts, explicitly. The Sumerian word is nam, which carries implications of something given with purpose, something intended, something sent. The moment this becomes dangerous, and this is where mainstream archaeology stops, is when you consider the implication. If dogs were gifts, then something had to do the giving. Something understood what humans needed. Something could predict what would be valuable to human survival and development. Something could apparently see into the future, or at least understand human nature profoundly enough to engineer a biological solution to problems humans hadn't even identified yet. This is where the reference material gets thin and the speculation gets thick. But let's follow the logic. The Sumerians were meticulous record keepers. They didn't make mistakes about the origins of things that lived in their homes, worked alongside them every day. Yet their records are unmistakably clear. Dogs came to humans. They weren't hunted. They weren't captured. They came. And maybe the most incredible part of all this is what we can observe in real time, right now, in the modern age. Dogs have gotten weirder, not tamer. As we've domesticated them further, selected them further, bred them further for specific traits, they've developed abilities that seem to exceed what their genetics should allow. Service dogs that predict seizures, therapy dogs that can sense panic attacks, detection dogs that can smell diseases before medical tests can find them. It's as if something was left unfinished in the original engineering, and we've been, inadvertently, completing it. The Sumerian tablets make one more appearance in this story, and it's in a description of what will happen when the dogs finish their purpose. When humans finally understand what they're meant to guard, what they're meant to maintain vigilance over, the Sumerians describe a kind of awakening, a moment when humans become conscious of something they've always known but couldn't articulate. They describe humans finally understanding themselves, understanding their own capacity for connection, awareness, and sensing things beyond the purely rational, understanding the same neurochemical language that dogs have been reading in us for thousands of years, becoming, in a sense, fluent in the language that dogs were created to speak. Is this what the Sumerian tablets are describing? A purpose that's been unfolding across human history, waiting for us to catch up? An investment in human consciousness made thousands of years ago by an intelligence we don't know how to talk about? The uncomfortable part is that we can't know, not yet, but we can ask the questions. We can examine the evidence. We can look at the abilities that dogs possess and ask ourselves whether those abilities really could have emerged through random human selection over a few thousand years. We can look at the precision of those abilities, the way seizure alert dogs alert 4 to 6 minutes before a seizure occurs, not more, not less, and ask whether that's really the result of breeding choices made by ancient humans who didn't understand neurology, or whether it suggests something far more deliberate. If you're interested in exploring this further, and I mean actually diving into the alternative theories and the genetic data that challenges the traditional domestication narrative, everything's available in the description and pinned comment. This isn't the kind of topic you can fully understand in 15 minutes, and I want you to have the tools to dig deeper yourself. Because here's the thing about mysteries that have been buried in academic footnotes and ancient translations that nobody really reads anymore. The more you look at them, the weirder they get. The more carefully you examine them, the more it becomes clear that someone, somewhere, understood something about human nature that we're only now beginning to rediscover. The Sumerians knew. They built a civilization, but before they did, they recognized something. They recognized what had been given to them. They recognized the gift. And now, thousands of years later, with all our science and all our theories, we're only beginning to understand what they meant. If this made you think differently about your dog, or about the entire history of human-animal relationships, I want to thank you so much for watching. This is exactly the kind of deep dive research that makes this channel possible. Please subscribe if you haven't already, hit that like button to help this reach more curious minds, and activate the notification bell so you never miss when we upload our next investigation into the strange history that textbooks won't touch. Thanks for exploring the unknown with us.